Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.
Hello and welcome to The Money Factor. Today we'll be talking about interviewing. It's a crucial part of any job interview, of course, but there's a lot more to it than that. Our guest is Dr. Thomas Denham from Careers in Transition. I want to welcome you back.
Thank you for having me again. It's good to be back.
We've gone through a few of the aspects of getting a job, and employment is on the top of, I guess, the news. It's not healthcare, it's employment.
That's right.
Let's kind of get it started by talking about, okay, we're talking about interviews. How do people do in general? I mean, I'm just kind of curious. Do you think people are generally pretty bad at it, or are they
I think
good
people
at
are pretty bad at it.
Okay, well then.
But I also think people who interview are pretty bad at it too. There are some people who are very skilled interviewers, and there's some people that are skilled interviewees. But interviewing is a learned skill that you can always improve on. And when you think about the job search, you only have control over certain things. You have control over your resume, your cover letter, and the interview process. You don't have control over your competition or the job market or other factors. So you have to think about, how can I put my best foot forward in my resume, in my cover letter, in my follow-up phone call, how I dress for the interview, the actual interview, my preparation and my articulation in the interview, perhaps a thank you letter after. Those are the things you have control over. And the interview is the most neglected part of the job search.
I think that's kind of like the table of contents of what we want to do today then. That sounds good.
Good.
We'll just tear that all apart and go step by step.
Excellent.
Stupid question first. What's an interview?
That's a stupid question. No. What is an interview? Obviously, it's a meeting between a candidate and an organization, company. The goal for the candidate, which cannot be emphasized enough, is to get an offer. In other words, it's like a date. It's a first date between the candidate and the employer.
And then I guess most of the time, most of the people who do dates are looking to develop a relationship.
That's right.
Not everyone, but
right.
But in this case, yes.
The other thing about an interview, along with the dating analogy, is that sometimes you have a first date and then you have a second date. Sometimes you have a first interview, sometimes you have a second interview.
And I've heard of thirds as well.
It's entirely possible. And then you get the engagement ring.
Okay.
Yep, you get the offer.
And that's really the goal.
That is the goal. And sometimes we lose sight of that. This is a game of persuasion, selling, and telling. You want to go in there, you want to say your top 3 to 5 main points, and you want to convince them that you are the #1 candidate and they must have you.
And so anything that might make you feel better, but that leads the whole process anywhere except getting that job, is to be avoided.
If you go in there and you think the interview is confused with therapy, that's a problem. Because during an interview, you want to be aware of your listen-talk ratio. You want to be talking at least 50% of the time, and you also want to be listening 50% of the time. If you go into an interview and you're talking all the time, you're not learning enough about them. If you go into an interview and they're talking 90% of the time, they're not learning enough about you in order to make that critical decision.
Yeah, I mean, from looking at that from my understanding point of view, if you're talking all the time, you're going in your own directions, and the person's not asking any questions, so you're not adjusting your direction to meet this other person.
Right. When you think about the interview, there's really 3 parts. There is the before, the during, and the after, if you were to look at the big picture. If you look at the during part, there's 3 parts. There's the intro, the body, the conclusion. It's like 8th grade composition English, where you have an intro, you have a conclusion, and then you have your body. So I tell all my clients that the interview is decided in the first 2 minutes.
Now, what do you mean decided?
Well, when you meet somebody, you pretty much size them up in 2 minutes based on how they, what they wear, how they hold themselves, their appearance. Did they smile? Did they give you a firm handshake? What was their tone of voice? Even before they get to that core part of the interview where you're going over your education, experience, and qualifications, they've already made a decision. If you go to court, the case is decided in the opening arguments. People come to very quick decisions. So that's why you have to make that good first impression. Very important.
Well, let's start with...
Oh, let me just say, you've already made a first impression with your resume and cover letter. They were obviously good enough if you got the interview.
But the first 2 minutes of the interview, you're saying that is really crucial.
Absolutely, absolutely critical.
And that's probably true of a lot of things.
That's right.
Well, let's talk about skills. You know, we're going to talk about what people need to do in the interview. You broke it down by before and during and after, and
right.
I learned now during has 3 parts, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
But what kind of skills are involved, just in general, of an interview? I mean, are you acting, or are you being honest, or what are we talking about here?
You're playing a role. Obviously, you're going to be professional. You wouldn't act in an interview the same way you would act at home. Okay. At home, you're going to be much more relaxed. You're going to walk around the house in your, your dirty clothes, and you're going to be much more at ease. Once you get the job, that's how you're going to be more. You're going to be more like yourself. But you are performing a role. It is more formal. But you want to be yourself at your very best. You don't want to be Dr. Tom Denham in the interview. You don't want to be somebody else. You want to be yourself at your best, and you want to highlight the best things about you. Your top 3 to 5 skills, your top 3 to 5 values in the workplace, your top 3 to 5 interests, and also your top 3 to 5 core personality traits that they're looking for.
That's a lot.
Like I said, this is a skill. This is something that you have control over. You can practice this. I do mock interviews, which are videotape practice interviews, where I videotape one of my clients for half an hour. I go through a real interview. Then we take the videotape, put it into my computer, and then we go through each question and see how they did. And I will ask them, after they give their answer, well, how do you think you did? Well, terrible. I could have done this and this. And I might say, well, what else could you do? Well, I could do this and this. And they take notes. And then I might give some feedback as well. And they'll see patterns over time of what they're doing right and what they're doing wrong. At the end, I say, would you hire this person? And almost
I
ask them, I say, would you hire this person that you saw on the video? And they say, almost every single time they say no.
I think people are more critical of themselves when they see themselves than anyone else.
Right. But many times they haven't practiced. If they came back and did a second mock interview, it would be a completely different situation. So if you were in sports, you would watch films of yourself.
Right, and they do.
In order to prove.
Right.
Yeah, in order to improve. So why can't interviewing be that way? If you have control over this process, you want to practice, practice, practice. Because if you don't practice, I can guarantee you somebody else has done a mock interview or is more skilled at interviewing or has practiced more than you have.
So let's think about and go through that list. We had preparation, and this show in a way is about preparation, because if you're going to watch the show, you're already
rules
thinking.
Of interviewing. Preparation, preparation, preparation.
So the first preparation, let's deal with that first. What do you do to get ready for an interview?
Okay. You have to know your career field. We're going to use Richard, the money factor man, as an example. Okay. You have to know your career field. You have to know the employer. You have to know yourself. And you have to know the job. So if I were interviewing you for a library position, I would say, Richard, what do you think is the #1 trend facing the library industry right now?
Facing it. Okay.
Yes.
Right.
And so that would be an example, a demonstrated example of, do you really know what's going on in your field of interest?
Right.
Some people don't know that, or some people haven't been asked that question that way.
And it would make a big difference in terms of interest if the person goes home every day and thinks about something totally different.
Right. I might say, Richard, if you could change one thing about the Colonie Public Library, what would it be? And you would have to know what was going on at the Colonie Public Library and the
And
programs
that's where
and
I'm
services.
applying for. So
Right, so you have to do your homework on that. And then I might say, I might also say, what part of this job appeals to you most? So you want to research the job
And now you're learning about me.
yes. And then, well, no, you're the candidate, so you're learning, I'm learning from you whether you know about the field, the company, the organization, now the job. Now I'm going to ask you, Richard, what do you think it's going to take to be successful in this position or in this job? So now I'm looking at your skills, your values, your interests, your personality traits. If I say, what's your greatest strength? Now I'm getting to know about Richard. So you want to have those things researched and rehearsed ahead of time.
So let's go through those 4 things one more time.
Okay,
Just-
there's 4. The career field,
okay.
from the top.
The big picture.
The organization,
That organism within the field
then the job,
and what's going on.
and you.
Okay. And that particular position and then the person.
Right. So that's a before. The other thing I would want to know is, where is the organization? Do they have free parking? So if you are
That's very practical.
It's it's very important because when I was the director of the Siena College Career Center, I would have students going to downtown Albany for an interview with a CPA firm at 9:15 in the morning or 9 o'clock in the morning.
With traffic.
Not knowing where to park, not bringing enough quarters, and then they're parking a million miles away from where the office is, running in the middle of February to the interview, showing up late and completely disheveled.
Pursuit of Happiness, Part 2.
Mm-hmm. So that's an example of how you have to prepare.
And that's just a simple practical thing.
Who,
How do you
here-
find out some of these things? Obviously, the last one you did.
Sure. Well, one of the things you can do is you can call ahead of time. You can call up and say, this interview sounds like a great opportunity. How can I best prepare for this interview?
Honest.
And that's an open-ended question.
And who do you ask for when you call?
You could either ask the person, it's either the human resource person, the person that you're interviewing with, or the secretary or receptionist. Okay. The other thing that you want to know...
But you want to be careful that if it's a really large company, that you're not really just at the switchboard.
Right, right. So you also, it's also like playing a game. You want to say something like, in order for me to best prepare, how long do you think the interview will be? If it's a half an hour interview, you have to keep your answers 30 seconds to a minute. If it's an hour-long interview, you're going to keep your answers 1 to 2 minutes. Okay? You want to know that ahead of time. So you would say, so they say to you, it's going to be an hour-long interview. Can you tell me how many people I'm going to interview with? Okay. Are you going to meet with one person for 1 hour?
Or
That's
30.
that's a very different ball game than if you show up and it's 3 one-hour interviews in the morning, followed by lunch with all those 3 people, plus the 3 people in the afternoon. So now you're having 3 one-hour appointments in the morning, 6 people at lunch with you, which is an interview in itself, and then 3 in the afternoon. You are going to be completely wiped out from that. And you need to know who these people are. So you need to data collect.
And you better get a good night's sleep if that's going to be what it is.
Right. One of the ways to overcome nervousness is to pretend that this is your very first day on the job. So if you, Richard, were going to work at the Albany Colonie Public Library for the first time, or you come for an interview, you'd want to think in your head and imagine that this was your first day. So you would be a little nervous, but you'd be very excited because now you're part of this team.
So it's really kind of an imaginary thing that you would have to be able to do.
If in your mind you say, oh my gosh, if I don't get this job, I'm going to lose my house, I'm going to lose my kids, I'm going to lose my car, I'm going to lose everything.
Yeah.
you're going to project that in the interview, and the interviewer is going to pick up on that. Because
And they don't
that's
want to
gonna
work with somebody
no.
who's falling apart.
You've got to be absolutely positive and encouraging. And that's why when I work with clients, I also work in concert with therapists and mental health professionals, because if you haven't taken care of the emotional issues from a downsize or a layoff, those things can carry into the interview and can be detrimental.
Now, you mentioned that some people have better skills at interviewing, and probably some people have been through this before and many times more often, so they do have an advantage.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the person just has to realize that you're going to get better also, and if this is your first interview, there are going to be more opportunities, but
Right.
do the best you can.
Right. If you were to go to a career fair, for example, and there's 100 companies there, what I first would do is I'd circulate around and organize my companies into the highest priority, high priority, and lower priority. I would start with the lower priorities to get to work the kinks out. So you would want to go and have your little mini interview and then start working up the ladder. And then when you get to the highest priorities, you've already had several mini interviews, and so you're ready with a stronger game
Am I
plan.
hearing you suggest that people should apply to a few jobs that they don't even expect to get, just to go through the experience? Or wouldn't accept, let me put it that way.
I rarely have somebody come to me and say, I went on this interview and it was a waste of time. I think the interviewee always learns something about themselves. Sometimes that can almost be like a mock interview. I know interviewers do not like it when the candidate's not serious, but also candidates don't like it when they're being interviewed and there's really no job there. They're just trying to figure out what's out in the pool.
Or they have to interview and somebody's already told them who they'd rather you hire.
Right. Like for example, maybe a company already has 2 or 3 people in mind, but they're giving a courtesy interview to you because your uncle works for the company or there's some kind of networking connection that way. So, but the rule with interviewing is the more practice, the more skilled you're going to be. If you go on 3 or 4 interviews, I guarantee by the time you get to the 5th interview, you're going to have your message down much more clearly and articulately and, most importantly, persuasively.
So that turns this more into a campaign than trying to hit the lottery on the first time.
If you were trying to get a bill through the legislature, you could just flood them with email or letters, but you'd really want to sit down with them face to face and argue your point or persuade your point instead of arguing. And that's what you're doing in an interview. You're trying to persuade them that the person that is sitting in front of you is the person that they should hire.
Now, from what we've just said, do we have the preparation part down?
I think that's pretty good. Oh, bring extra copies of your resume.
Okay.
Make sure you dress professionally. I actually have a handout that people can email me, and I will send them called Dress to Impress. I also have sample interview questions.
I guess you could go to a company without being in the interview and look around and see what people are wearing. Would that be a good idea?
You could probably find a YouTube video of what people are wearing on the inside. Sure, there are certainly ways to research. The more you research, the more you read, the more you review, the more you practice, the better you're going to feel, the more confident you're going to feel, the more confident your answers are going to be.
But probably if you're dressed neat, business attire, you're going to be pretty much okay.
It depends on the company. Now, for example,
software
company, maybe it's a casual atmosphere. So you want to dress the way the people there dress. If you're going to go for an accounting firm, oh, absolutely, you're going to wear a suit.
Now, is that something you could ask them on the phone when you call?
Well, you could also go to this new website called Google, and you could go in there and you could say dress code for...
Is that like Bling? Or Bing? Or
You could go in and type in dress code for small businesses, dress code for... you could even probably put a dress code for such a company,
and it would
see it's all what kind of keywords.
So here the computer really is helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you could also ask friends, family, and then just get a sense: is this a formal work environment or is it more casual and more relaxed?
Okay.
Very important.
Now names.
Now, just one other thing about dress. For example, if you were a teacher and you're going for a teacher interview, of course you're going to dress very professionally, but they are not going to expect that that's what you're going to wear when you get to the classroom.
Okay. Well, that's why I meant, if you come in business attire, for most companies, they're not going to mind. If I were interviewing at a deli, they probably wouldn't mind if I came in a tie. Maybe I'm a chef, because I'm not cooking right now.
Right, but see, for a deli, I probably wouldn't wear the tie.
Okay.
I'd probably bag the tie. I'd probably have a jacket and a button-down shirt.
Okay.
Yeah, I think most people understand that you've got to dress more conservatively for the interview than you normally would.
And doesn't it show respect a little bit also?
Absolutely. It says, I took the time out to dress professionally because I'm serious about this position. If you dress, if their expectations are here and your dress is up here, 9 times out of 10 you're in good shape and they're impressed with that. If you dress down here, you haven't met their expectations.
And now they think, what is he thinking, or she? Don't they understand that?
Right. This person's not taking it seriously.
Exactly.
And it also goes back to control. You controlled what you could have worn. Now, dress alone might not throw you out, but if you were 10 minutes late, you didn't prepare, you didn't do any research on the company, you messed up a couple answers.
You're nervous.
You look nervous, and you didn't dress professionally, and then you didn't send a thank you note.
Could be a very short interview.
You add up all those things, and it comes up to be a no.
Yeah. Yeah, you blew it on every count.
That's right.
Okay,
so that's preparation.
So we've done our homework. We've learned what we can learn. We've tried to figure out some questions. What about obvious questions? One more thing before we get there. Is it a good idea to try to think of, now, what might they find as a problem when they looked at my interview? And think of that as, okay, how do I answer such a thing? Okay, here I didn't have anything there.
Okay.
What am I going to say?
Well, here's, again, the thing that you want to keep in mind is the goal is for you to get the offer. What are my strengths that I want to spend the most time focusing on? What are my weaknesses that I want to spend the least amount of time on, but have the best explanation for them? What are the top 3 to 5 things that are on my resume and on my background that match this job that they need to know about me?
And that should probably be written down, no?
Those, again, goes back to preparation. These things should be written down. Again, I have a list, 2-page list of sample questions, and I have them organized by skills, the employer, long-term goals, things like that. So any question is fair game as long as it's a legal question. So they might ask you something like, where do you see yourself in 3 to 5 years?
And even though that's asked all the time, it's a hard question.
It is a hard question. The interview goes back to the first step of career development, which is self-assessment. So if you have an answer, if you can't answer where you see yourself in 3 to 5 years, you haven't done enough self-assessment. A lot of times people go to interviews and they'll realize, gosh, I really don't want to work for that company anyway. Well, yeah, we could have told you that because you didn't do the self-assessment first. That's the building block. That's what every time I come on the show, that's what I keep talking about,
right.
Self-assessment, self-assessment, self-assessment. They might ask you questions like, what's your greatest strength? What's your greatest weakness? What kind of a boss do you prefer?
You have a law degree. Why are you applying for a job in
Right. You don't have any experience in this field. Why should I hire you? Another type of a question, those are traditional questions. Another type of question might be what's called a behavioral-based interview question.
I like those.
Those are really challenging. So one of the questions might be, Richard, give me an example of a time where you had to use your organizational skills to solve a problem.
And then I know, because that's my favorite type of interview process, that it goes back to all kinds of things that can demonstrate that organizational skill. It could even be that you organized wedding for people, or you organized a trip for a huge group of people, which can be really complicated. And then you got to say how it came out. And
that's right. With the behavioral-based interview questions, they're not yes/no questions. So the way to handle that is a 3-step process. What you do is you tell them the situation, you tell them what you did, what your role was, what action you took, and then you tell them what the result was. So it's situation, your role, and then result. You always end on a result. But those require you to come up with concrete examples. If somebody says, give me an example of a time where you had to give your best presentation.
And the neat thing about these are, you might know the right answer to a lot of questions if it's just, what do you think about this? But when you have to say what you did, now you're giving evidence that you really can do what
That's right. You have to give
saying.
demonstrated specific examples that prove that you have that core competency or skill. If somebody asks you, what 5 words best describe you? You could say, honest, caring, organized, and a team player. Something like that. That's
And of
4.
course, everybody would say good things like that.
That's right. Anyone can say that. But if I ask you, give me an example of a time where you had to go above and beyond the call of duty. Wow, that's a tough question.
Right.
So a lot of people go into interviews and they say, you know, I'm a great talker, I'll just talk my way through this interview. And they get a question like that, and it's very humbling. Then they usually come back to me and say, I want a mock interview. Because they say, wow, they asked me some questions that I really wasn't prepared for.
Great idea.
Sometimes you'll go into an interview, and the interesting thing about interviews is it's like a box of chocolates. You never know what to expect. Somebody might be extremely skilled, somebody might not be skilled.
They might be nervous.
They might be nervous. You might have somebody that talks about themselves and all their memorabilia on the wall and then their favorite sports teams and their family, and it's all about them, the interview. And then that way, in that kind of situation, you have to redirect the interview. Somebody might not be skilled at interviewing people.
I think we're into the middle section of our
We are, probably.
question.
I would, yes. And somebody might say, well, Richard, why don't you sell yourself? Which is another way of saying I don't know what questions to ask because I don't know what information I'm looking for.
Right.
But that can be a very intimidating question. And again, the other one is, why should I hire you?
Yeah, out of the blue,
Right.
because you don't know where to start.
I should also say, let's go back to that first 2 minutes. Let's say Richard is going for his interview at the Colonie Public Library. He pulls up. When should he walk in the door? 10 minutes before the interview. Not a half an hour, not 20 minutes. If you show up a half an hour early,
That's
person
considered inconsiderate.
right, and now that person's waiting around.
And don't expect that they're going to want to interview you early. That's really
exactly
stupid.
right. So 10 minutes early, you walk in the
And
door.
just to let them know you're there, right?
That's right. Not 1 minute late. That's a bad way to start off the interview. So,
And I would say not even exactly on time,
Right.
because where is he? Where is she?
that's right.
I'd kind of like to know that they're there. You know, like in theater, 3 minutes, you're on in 3 minutes.
Right. That's right. So when the person comes out of the office, you're going to stand up, you're going to walk over, and you're going to give a big smile, and you're going to give a handshake. You're going to give 2 pumps. You're not going to keep going like this for 10 minutes because it's very annoying. Could I have my hand back, please?
Right.
And you're going to give a good firm
With a dumb smile.
Yeah. And it's going to be a good firm handshake, but it's not going to be bone crushing. You're going to look them in the eye and you're going to smile.
It's not a strength contest.
No, it's not, and it's not a competition, but you're going to give them a great smile and you're going to show a lot of energy and enthusiasm. I don't care how bad your morning was or the fact that you didn't get enough sleep last night, you are on stage.
And you can practice that.
And you can practice that. This is setting the tone for the interview. This is that first 2 minutes. I can always tell when I go out and I see a client and I shake their hand, and I see how they handle themselves, I can tell how much energy they have. People get hired based on energy and enthusiasm and value added, what they bring to the organization. Obviously your resume and cover letter are good enough to get you in there. But there's an old saying in career development, you hire for attitude and you train for knowledge. So sometimes people who are less qualified get the job because they have a better energy, attitude, enthusiasm toward the work.
Now, it's going to vary a little bit by job. If you're an accountant, it's going to be a little different than if you're an attorney where you have to talk to jurors and clients.
Yeah, I mean, I think the skills that you would use for an interview for an accountant would be different from the skills if you were going to be a motivational speaker.
Right. We don't want creativity in the accountant.
Right.
We might want creativity.
The person that gets the job is the person that is the liked the most. It's a popularity contest. They want to make sure that you're qualified for the position, but really you are going to be spending more time with that organization and those people than you are with anyone else in your life, and that includes your family. You're going to be spending 8 or 10 hours a day. And in the back of their head, the interviewer's thinking, do I want to spend 8 or 10 hours a day with this person? And so...
And how would this person get along with my staff?
How is this person going to gel with this other team that I've got? Is this person going to be a good team member? And really, the word that best describes it is chemistry. Do I have chemistry with this person? And is this person going to fit into this team like a family member?
And I guess you would also get a hint that they're aware of that if there's more than one person interviewing.
That's the advantage of having other people interview the candidate, is that they get different perspectives.
Right, and then they can say, well, I think we could work with this person.
Right. So that first 2 minutes, very important. That's that, and then what you do is, after you get away from the small talk, which is very important, look around their office. What kind of things do they have? You know, are they skiers? Are they mountain climbers? Are they like a particular baseball team? You want to touch on those things. And then the bulk of the interview is going to be about your education and your experience, some of the questions that we talked about. 2/3, 3/4 into the interview, you want to be saying, you want to be checking in with yourself and saying, how am I doing? Is this person interested in me? What's their tone? What's their inflection? What's their body language? Most communication is nonverbal. So if I'm interviewing you and you give me answers and I'm like this, it means I'm defensive.
Generally.
I'm closed. I'm telling you something by going like this. If I'm more like this, I'm engaged. Okay, so that body language is very important, and you should be reflecting back the body language that they have.
Of course, you don't want to make a real sourpuss of a face back.
No. And the other thing is, if, like just for this TV show, if I smile, Richard smiles.
Much easier.
It's absolutely contagious.
Much easier, yeah.
So the best thing you can do is, no matter how you're feeling, you should smile 20% more than you normally do, because it's contagious. See, you keep smiling. Now you're laughing. Now you're releasing endorphins and chemicals, and now you love me, and now you want to give me the job offer.
Right.
And the other thing is, I should mirror you during this television show. I should be like this as well. So if I'm the interviewer, I should be sitting back, and you should not be on the edge of your seat. When I have a client and I know that they're on the edge of their seat, I know that they're nervous.
Okay.
So these nonverbal cues can't be emphasized enough. So 2/3, 3/4 into the interview, you should be checking in and saying, how am I doing? Is this person persuaded? Am I building that relationship? Do I think this person is going to give me that job offer? And then, what are the things that I have done that are working? Let's do more of those. What are the things that I haven't done? Do I need to do some damage control? Where am I in the process? Toward the end of the interview, you've got to close the deal. Okay? They may ask you a question like, before we close, is there anything else you'd like to add or reemphasize? So if that is most time during the interview, I will ask the questions and you will respond. So I am in control of the interview. When I say, before we close, is there anything you would like to add or reemphasize, I am now giving the floor of the interview over to you, and now you have some creativity to say what you wanted to say. Perhaps there's something that you wanted to say and emphasize in your resume and cover letter
You didn't get a chance.
that I didn't get a chance to cover. That's really important, that is going to seal the deal for you.
And that goes back to that preparation where you're kind of checking off, okay, we did this and this and this.
Right. Then at the end, you want to say, what are the next steps in the process? What else do you need from me? Do you need letters of recommendation? Do you need letters of reference? Do you need a note from my mother? What do you need? Do you need a transcript? And then you also want to know, tell me a little bit more about the interview process. Where are you in the process? Well, we've got 5 other people that we'd like to interview, and it's going to take the next 3 to 4 weeks. You want to see, are they going to give you an offer tomorrow or 2 months from now?
And it's not a bad thing if they're giving you signals that it's going to be quicker.
Right. When I applied for my job at Siena College, I applied before Memorial Day. I didn't get an interview until July. Okay. I know that colleges are notoriously slow. I didn't realize that they were that slow, but
I was 9 months between my interview here and coming on.
Okay, so you have to kind of plan ahead for
Right.
those types of things. After the interview, again, shake hands, smile, show them your energy, enthusiasm. That's your last chance to really close on a positive and enthusiastic note. And then the next thing you should do is go home and write a thank you note.
Well, that gets us to part 3, afterwards.
That's right. Well,
What else?
before you write the thank
Okay,
you note, or
okay.
you could write the thank you note, first thing is to go home and start taking notes. On what? What were the things that you said right? What were the stupid things you said that you won't say in the next interview, or might be deal breakers for this interview?
And how did it feel, or?
Just your feelings as well, but you want to do sort of analysis. What were the strengths of this position? What were the weaknesses of this opportunity? What opportunities might come up for advancement? And what might be threats? Maybe you're interviewing for a job for a company that only has 5 people. One of the threats would be this is not Microsoft where it's going to be in business for a long time. It could go downhill. So
And it might also not be a job where you're going to be able to go up through 7 bureaucratic levels.
yeah, one of the questions you should be asking, even in the beginning stages, is how long do I think I'm going to be in this job for? Most
That's
people,
just for yourself.
That's for yourself. Most people don't think that way. Most people, when somebody gets a job, I say, how long do you think you're going to be in that job? And they have no idea. They haven't thought that way. Or I'll say, where do you think this job is going to lead to your next job? Most people haven't thought that carefully.
And maybe you could write down also any names or any facts or anything that
What do you think the
sticks out.
salary ranges? Maybe they mentioned salary. You don't want to talk about salary until an offer is made, but maybe they talked about salary. Maybe there were some good things that they said. Maybe there's some things that you're not too happy about. Maybe there's some even more questions that you have that need to get clarified in a second interview or a telephone conversation. So you really want to do some careful analysis. If you go home that day and take the notes, that's when it's freshest in your mind. And then you can take some time to really assess and review and analyze whether this is the best opportunity for you. But also that day you should write a thank you letter. Sometimes it's appropriate to do it electronically. I personally like to get notes, but if you're applying for a position with an accounting firm, you're not going to send them a Monet note card from Hallmark.
Okay. Personally, I'm happy with either one. If just somebody thinks to thank me for the interview, I'm already thinking, well, that's a nice person.
I have given job offers to candidates when they send me the Monet card with the notes when it's handwritten, and they also include a $250 EMS gift card in there. That works every time for me.
On probation, of course.
Right, that's exactly right. So I think we live in a much more informal society. That thank you note has to be personalized. It's going to be shorter than, say, a cover letter. Again, if you're applying for an accounting firm, it's going to be, it's going to be typed.
And what about formalities here? Thanks, Tom. It was great to interview for you, and I do look forward to hearing.
The thank you letter or note is your last time to reemphasize your interest in the position, that you really want it. A job offer is only given to somebody when the employer knows that they really want it. They don't want to give you a job offer if they don't think that you want the opportunity. Reemphasize your interest in the position, and you reemphasize your top 3 to 5 qualities that they're looking for. You may even want to say, I will be sending a copy of my transcript within the next 3 to 4 days as you requested.
Certainly anything that you said you would do.
Right.
But can that be too long, or, I mean, you don't want to send a 3-page thank you.
Right. So you may want to highlight 1 or 2 things in the interview. One of the things I like best about the interview was the fact that you promote from within your company, as you mentioned, such and such, such and such. So personalize it. So you're not sending out a mass thank you note, which no one likes to get.
Okay.
That's why I like the handwritten cards, because they tend to be more personalized.
And I think we're almost there. What about that follow-up phone call? You don't hear anything. When do you call?
If I say to Richard, Richard, thank you for interviewing for this position. We've got a couple more candidates. I'm going to give you, we're going to make our decision in 2 weeks. If you don't hear from me in 2 weeks, you have every right to contact them by phone and say, This is Richard. I want to again reiterate my interest in the position. I just want to know where you are in your interview process, rather than saying, you know, I haven't heard from you. Did you
hired somebody else?
Yeah, it's like, what the heck? You promised in 2 weeks that you're going to get back to me, and you haven't.
No
It's
whining.
not very positive.
No.
No whining. It's absolutely out during this process, because you want to be essentially
You're in control.
positive. Yes, you're in control of how you handle it. So, so let's say they say, well, you know, we had a computer problem, everyone went on vacation or whatever, we'll get back to you in another week. Another week later, I would call them. And I would keep calling, not every day, not every hour, and certainly not at home, and I wouldn't show up at their doorstep, but you have a right to know where you stand in the process. Sometimes employers like to see that you're still interested and that you're still eager, rather than they have to chase you down.
One more question. Of course, we want the job. You know, we apply. A lot of people need the job.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we already have a job and we're interested, but it's not. That's why I could wait 9 months. I wasn't starving. It was just a better job. But shouldn't we also want to know if that job is for us? And so I guess the question is, that's kind of an obvious statement, but how do you do that? How do you find out without being obnoxious? I mean, you can't ask the person if he's a jerk.
Right. Everyone's on their best behavior during the interview. And it's very hard to tell whether this is going to be a good marriage after just one date. That's why I recommend everyone go on 2 dates. Go on to the first interview and go on the second interview. In every job, what happens psychologically is you idealize the job and then you devalue it over time. So anytime I talk to somebody that's been given a job and they start, I'll ask them, how are things going? Oh, it's great. I'm meeting new people. I'm learning new things. It's a great company with great benefits. You ask that same person 5 years later, how are things going? And the learning curve has gone downhill. They're not as challenged. They've gotten into the office politics. They learned some things about the company that they don't necessarily like. So
It's not perfect.
it's not perfect. Not like a marriage is not perfect. Everyone when in their 20s, gets married and they think, well, it's just going to be bliss for the next
Just like the
50
first year.
Yes, yeah. The first year of marriage is going to be exactly the same as the last year of marriage, and you mature and you grow and develop. If you're continually being challenged in that job, that's going to be a position where you're going to grow and develop. But the most important thing is we live in an era of career self-management, and you have to be thinking, where does this job take me? Either within this company or another company.
So I guess you're saying we can't really find out for sure if we want to work for them right away. I mean, you do your homework.
You have to do your homework.
But you're going to find out later.
You have to take a leap of faith and you have to try.
Okay. That's a lot to digest. I know that a good idea would be to be interviewed, have it filmed, to check it out. You can also do books. Some people might not want to spend the money, but...
Well, there's 3 things you can do. You can do reading research on the internet. There are great books out there. You can have a mock interview. You can practice on your own. But again, it's like learning a sport. You don't just show up and say, I know I just bought a glove, but I'd like to play third base for the Mets.
So work at it.
Yeah, it's a skill and you have to learn. The more you put into it, the more you get out of it and the better results. The people that typically get the jobs are the ones that are the most prepared and the most skilled at interviewing, and that annoys a lot of people because sometimes the person that gets the job is not necessarily the one that's the most qualified.
And we all take a leap of faith when we hire someone as well.
That's exactly right.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you for having me again. I really appreciate it.
Great. And I want to thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the show, you got a lot out of it, and that you tune in again next time. Take care.
Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.